Welcome, folks, to this week's edition of Tech Sales Advice. I am, of course, your host, Chris White, and this is the LinkedIn Live program for technical sales professionals and technical sales leaders. And, folks, these are live conversations. We are coming to you live, 12 noon here on the East Coast, and I'm particularly excited for today's conversation. Now, a few months ago, I had a gentleman named Paul Vidal from Reprise on, and we were talking about demo programs, and it was mostly theory and concepts. It was a great conversation, but I wanted to go deeper, and I wanted to talk to somebody and invite someone on the show who's actually been through the process of standing up a demo program. And I was introduced to today's guest. Her name is Ashita Saluja. She is the Senior Director of Field Engineering Strategy and Scale with Databricks. And first of all, Ashita, thank you so much for being here. I love the fact that you have scale in your title, because that's what so many organizations want to do. Thank you so much for being here. How are you today?
I'm really good. Thank you for bringing me in. It's a quiet office at Databricks here in San Francisco this morning.
Well, I appreciate you getting into the office a little bit early to have this conversation, and I'm excited to dive in. So, Ashita, one of the things that I love doing with my guests is just inviting them to just introduce themselves a little bit more broadly. Would love for you to share sort of how you got into pre-sales, and then how did you end up in this role responsible for strategy and scale?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very unorthodox journey, and I think it is for many people in pre-sales. I don't think anybody goes to college and finds out that there is, this is part of the problem. The PR is really bad for a pre-sales organization.
Amen.
Um,
Hopefully things like this are helping to spread
exactly.
the word a little.
Exactly. But when I talk to my nieces and nephews, they have no idea what it is. But I'm
Yeah.
on the warpath to let them know. Uh, but I used to run. I'm an engineer by trade. I did my bachelor's in electronics and telecommunication. Got out of that fairly quickly and got into managed services. And then I
Mhm.
was running the APAC support desk
Okay.
for what is now known as Salesforce Marketing Cloud. Um, at the time, our managing director came up to me and said, "You're good with clients. It's the hardest to be good with clients when stuff's not going well. Nobody wants
Mm.
to tell you that things are going well.
Yeah.
Um, and would you consider pre-sales?" And I went, "The dark side, I'm not doing that." But it's not. He said, "The reason you're going to do well is because you truly care about the trust of the customer.
Yeah.
And that's why you're going to do well in this role. I don't want you to change how you consult with customers. Just do it on the pre-sales side."
Yeah.
And that was it. I decided to give it a shot, and I was hooked. I think that was 2010, and
Amazing, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think so many of us who sort of discover pre-sales some way or another, in your case, you had colleagues who clearly observed your ability to communicate and engage with customers, recognize that you'd be good in the role, and you did what a lot of people do, sales. I don't want to be, don't put me in, don't, that's not me, right? But then we
yeah.
get into the role and we discover actually sales is a noble profession,
It's
and for the individuals with the right mix of skills, there's no better job, right?
yeah. If you love problem solving and you like people, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting, and this might be a fun exercise for you to do with some of your people sometime. In the workshops that I run, we do introductions in the beginning, and now what I ask them is share one word that describes what they love most about pre-sales. And that is just when you have 20 people, that's a fun exercise. But let's dive into this idea of how you got into strategy and scale,
Mhm.
and some of what you've learned in that role, particularly in building and
Right.
implementing and rolling out a demo program. So
Yeah.
first, let's talk about the role.
Yeah. So at Databricks, field engineering is another way of saying pre-sales and customer success in one place.
Okay.
Our leader over global field engineering happens to be one of the seven co-founders of Databricks.
Wow.
So that was definitely what was attractive to me coming in here, is that I wanted to work under one of the co-founders, and I report to the chief of staff for that person. So
That's
that's very
amazing.
interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really interesting to me about the way we're doing things here is it's a consumption motion. I think if you work
Mm,
for the Clouderas, the AWSs, the Azures of the world, you might be familiar with this.
yeah.
But I came from a world where every SaaS company, including where I worked for 11 years, Salesforce, was struggling with the big customer problem of shelfware.
Mm,
And let's be honest, if you're in pre-sales, on paper, you don't have to worry about it. In reality, that's not true. You
right.
can't more secure an upsell
Yeah.
if you haven't proved value with what they've already bought. And so I
No
was
doubt.
really excited about this financial model. It felt more customer centric to me.
Mm,
I was excited to see what I had learned from running pre-sales team at Salesforce, which I had done for almost 10 years before I moved, and going kind of behind the scenes and being the person that helps people like me in the field,
mm,
because I felt like I understood their day to day. I
yeah.
understood their problems in a way that I often struggle to explain it to strategy and ops in former roles where I was in the field and I didn't necessarily feel like it translated to the people who were creating the processes and the assets for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think the fact that you spent so many years in the field gives you such a good perspective in this role because you understand, as I like to say, you understand the plight of the sales engineer, you understand the plight of the sales engineer leader, right? So let's talk about then the demo program that you stood up. When you know it's been a learning journey for me just around demo automation and this idea that demo automation is really just a component of a larger program or initiative or strategy called a demo program. Did you specifically set out to build a demo program, or did you start with just, hey, let's get one of these tools and build and do some demo automation or
Yeah.
create some automated demos that can be used, and then did it sort of evolve into this program from there?
Yeah, definitely the second. So when I came in, our team was very small. Um, our leader came from a mid-sized, high-growth startup,
Mm,
and he basically brought me in saying, "I need somebody who's been there, done that, who can come behind the scenes and do whatever's required." So I think by the end of the first year, I had this weird smorgasbord of a team. I had a couple people who ran internal knowledge management for pre-sales and kind of like the
okay.
sales playbooks, the golden assets, things like that,
Yep.
keeping them refreshed. I had a couple folks who were on demo excellence, but that wasn't really a big focus of the company because we were
Okay.
at the time maybe 400 field engineers.
Yeah.
Our brand wasn't as big as it is now,
Mm,
and we had to prove ourselves to the point that I think more often than not we were going in and suggesting a proof of concept
mm,
in order to get to a decision about Databricks being vendor of choice.
mm.
And that for me is the most expensive way to get to that decision,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
For the
Yeah.
customer and for us. Like a proof of concept isn't light on the customer either. Um,
Without a doubt.
so yeah, so that was one. And then the final part of my team was really industries. So as with a lot of high growth companies, we kind of just went wherever the market was taking us. We
Right.
had a strong foundation in digitally native businesses who understood machine learning and what our platform gave to the practitioners like data scientists. What we were still figuring out is how are we going to go and talk to a VP of analytics at a financial services company, different from
Mm,
um, I don't know, a patient's readmission officer in healthcare.
yeah.
And that's something that I had a lot of experience doing at Salesforce. I had done that for 100+ member demo engineering team
Wow.
over there. So I had a lot of passion and understanding of that. But in a sense, I had to kind of figure out, hey, these are all the things we could do. Doesn't mean I should do it just because it works there.
Mm, yeah.
What is it that Databricks needs right now?
Yeah.
And the demo thing didn't start showing up in the hierarchy of needs till, I would say, 1 year into the role.
Okay. And when you say the demo thing, do you mean demo automation, the demo program?
The concept that you could circumvent a POC
Mm,
with a set of put together demos and workshops
mm,
was a change management exercise in itself in field engineering. I didn't do it single handedly. A lot of leaders started to figure this out.
yeah.
But honestly, the momentum and where we had come from as a company was POCs. There was,
Yeah.
in our Salesforce opportunity object, there was a stage after,
Mm,
I think, discovery and validating or something called POC scoping.
wow.
So literally, we were telling the A's without telling them, once you're done validating and you're done with discovery, the next step for you is to scope a
Scope
POC.
a POC, right?
I'm like, feels like there's a better way. Yeah.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. So how did the demo program end up changing that whole process?
So a couple things happened in parallel. As I said, we had a couple leaders who kind of figured out that you could go in with what they were calling a point of view or a set of workshops
Mm,
instead of a POC. And
mm,
the smartest thing I can do in my role is, rather than come up with ideas, scale ideas that have already been tested and incubated in parts of the business.
mm,
I kind of leaned in with that team a lot and I tried to understand what they were doing, what was working. And they said, look, what we realized is at the end of the day, if you looked at our POCs and you kind of peeled back the onion, there's really just 5 kind of POCs we're doing. And what if we just
mm.
kind of industrialize that and had it a little bit in a box? And I said, well, you could also, demos could help with that as well. And around the same time, they also started looking for leave behinds. They started looking for, the whole
Mm,
demo concept was kind of starting to pick up. And we were innovating at such a fast pace that every pre-sales person's nightmare is demoing something that's fresh, not
mm.
even GA. Hey, this is our newest technology. It
R-
totally works, even though we just announced it a week ago. It is ready for you. Uh,
Right?
and so those were also situations where we said, we need to enable our customers, we need to enable ourselves,
Mm,
we need to do so in a low risk manner. We know that by the time they're ready to buy, the product will get there, but it may
yeah,
not be there today.
yeah.
So how are you even going to do a POC for those kind of new products? So our product surface area was also increasing. So what worked before didn't work later. So
Mm,
I'd say there's a lot of things that happened
yeah,
simultaneously.
yeah.
So 2022 definitely felt like, from the beginning to the end, it was night and day. The perspective and the desire that field engineering leaders had for a demo program in general, and then a demo automated program powered by something like Reprise.
Yeah, yeah. That's just amazing. Ashita, let me pause just for a moment. Art from tuned in. Best demo is no demo. Best technical proof is no POC. Well said, Art. Thanks for chiming in. Nice to see you. By the way, folks, we don't see you out there, so if you do care to say hello, please feel free to do so. If you have any questions for Ashita, please feel free, or myself, of course, please feel free to ask. So, Ashita, I want to sort of paraphrase what I'm hearing around this POC, the eval, the POC. So when you joined, POC scoping was literally a phase
Mhm.
in the CRM. Every deal, in fact, you were it's almost unintentionally instructing all the AEs to work towards a POC. When you peeled back the onion, what you discovered is that there were generally speaking, 5 types of POCs that covered probably most of the scenarios, and that you could actually create. And I love the term point of view. I literally wrote that down. If you entered, or if the teams entered with a very succinct point of view and had a series of leave behinds and demo automation, or automated demos combined with a structured workshop, that replaced the
Yep.
POC process.
Yep.
And what did that do to the win rates, and B, the time that it took to actually, or the average time, if I can use that term, which I know is very tough, but did it have an impact on win rates and or life cycle length?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, life cycle, yes. In fact, that was the reason people would do it. Like literally, there was the water cooler conversation was, "Oh, are you guys still doing POCs or are you doing POVs now?" Very, very funny. I kind of
Mm,
loved that.
I love that.
Yeah. Um, but it was shrinking the sales cycles for sure. We have this
Mm,
concept of technical win.
yep.
Because we're in a consumption motion, it's not like the deal closes. So what we're trying to achieve as a pre-sales organization is the technical win, to say Databricks is the vendor of choice. Go do your commercial thing and make it a business win, right? So our technical wins were faster. Now,
Mm,
I don't want to make it seem like it completely changed everything. I think for new customers, especially in newer markets, we still had to prove ourselves, and
hmm.
we still saw a lot of POCs there.
Yeah.
But I think that is natural for any software company,
Yeah.
right? You
For
go
sure.
in, people don't know who you are. Like if you're a Cerner or an Epic and you go to a healthcare company, that's very different from if you're a SaaS company or Databricks and they're
Right.
trying to figure out who you are and how you fit in.
Right.
So I think we saw that in new markets like Japan, which we were starting
Mm,
to kind of make progress in, and then in new customers, the POC
mm,
rates declined a lot less than they did. But for existing customers, they're like, yeah, I know who you are. I know what your thing does.
yeah.
Great. Let's just show me how to feel comfortable with this part of the platform or this use case or this
Right.
solution.
Right.
Let's go from there.
Yeah. 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 That's amazing. And I'm sure as a result, and I know part of your role literally has scale in the name. I'm sure that did in fact help the pre-sales teams scale and do more with less, as we love to say.
Yeah, yeah. We had some platforming issues that we had to take care of as well before we were ready for something like Reprise.
Yeah.
So one of the challenges of our product was it was built by data engineers and data scientists back
Mm,
10 years ago at the University of Berkeley by our co-founders for data engineers and data scientists. Doesn't tend to demo very well to a business leader off the chart, right?
yeah.
So one of the things we had to do was say, okay, for this to demo well, the data has to already be in there
Mm,
in order to show all the dashboards and the machine learning work that you want to show off to a
right.
business user. And so the absolute MVP of our demo program here at Databricks is Quentin Ambard. If you don't follow
Mm.
his YouTube channel, he's just hilarious guy, amazing guy. He's out here right now at Summit trying to figure out
And
uh,
and say his name again for me
Quentin
and for the
Quentin Ambard. So he was our
Quintin.
first, yeah, our first solution architect, which is what we call our pre-sales consultants here in France. And he kind of cracked the code around the same time that a lot of people in the US were, that you could get away with a lot with the demo. And so we he relocated to Toronto and he kind of became my chief demo excellence officer, if you will. That's not his official title.
Love that though. Chief Demo Excellence Officer.
And one of the first things he did in November 2022 was release this concept of Databricks demos.
Mm,
And what it was a single line that you had to execute in our platform that would download a preset um, load of data, notebooks, which is how we write our machine learning models, dashboards, etc. So it's like one line, and you go, I want the fraud detection one for FSI. I want the patient readmission one for HLS. And it would just download all of it.
yeah.
I think it was in November that this happened. And it was like the side GitHub project for us.
Interesting.
And then by February, so many customers started using it as a baseline.
Mm,
And basically, SAs could say, go play around with it on your own. And if you have questions, let me know.
yeah.
That we actually put it on databricks.com/demo. And it's like kind of the foundation of how we do all demos today. So
Wow.
we had to create that structure that was right for our platform. Now, some companies don't have this problem. If you're familiar with Salesforce, they have extremely robust SDO and IDOs. But I would really urge people to understand what layers does your product need
Mm,
for a robust automated demo program. And in our case, it was this DB demos concept of, instead of like bringing in the data and then loading up the machine learning models, you
yeah.
just wrote this one line and it just dropped everything into your environment. And then you could pull out what you didn't need, pull in like synthetic data that your customer might have given you, customize it really quickly. So at least it
Right.
got you 60 to 70% of the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you mentioned some of the growth areas, and I think I recall you saying that you also started using demos for client onboarding and on ramping. Can you elaborate a little bit on that
Yeah,
part of
yeah,
it?
yeah. So, like I said, when we released this, we were surprised to see customers downloading it more than internal folks. So we very quickly.
Which is just amazing, right? I mean, it's just amazing. Yeah.
So, I mean, every hour that they do that themselves is an hour we don't have to spend with them, let's be honest. But that's the scale part, right? But customer onboarding is interesting. So even after we get the technical win, we don't start getting paid. And Databricks or the A's and S's don't really start getting paid till they start consuming.
Consumption. Yeah.
Consumption. It's a consumption emotion. We're not getting comped on deals. This is, I know, a very new disruptive thing it feels like in the SaaS market, but
Yeah.
it's the only way to get away from this Shellfire problems of the last 2 decades. Um, so in onboarding, we noticed again people were having to do the exact same thing. They were having
Mm,
to configure their AWS or Azure or GCP environment, then install Databricks on top of that, then do some baseline administration setup. As I told you, field engineering is customer success plus pre-sales.
right.
So you've got, assume that a customer success person has 10 customers. They're spending 10 hours, 1 hour with each of these new customers, onboarding
Mm,
them.
yeah.
Instead, if they could just send them a link that says, follow this, this is
Yeah.
exactly what you need for a combination of AWS with this part of Databricks and this kind of data.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions, let me know.
Yeah.
And the challenge is a lot of us get frustrated with our support teams because they send the customer the documentation. They're not the
Mhm.
problem. I used to be in support. The documentation is usually the problem.
Right. Right.
And a customer needs to like pull parts of documentation from 10 different pages to make it work for them. And
Right.
that's where the customer goes, SA, can you just do it? Because I'm not getting what I need.
Right.
And so we did it for them. We packaged it up and we handed it over to our onboarding team, which is a shared technical services team that we have globally. They operate across EMEA, APJ, and then we have a huge US branch out in US and Costa Rica. So yeah, they just started using it as start here and then let us know what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's the interesting pattern that I'm seeing, if I can use that term, it's going to be redundant, is that similar to the POC automation, where when you peeled it back, you discovered that there's sort of 5 patterns of POCs. With client onboarding, it sounds like it was very similar, right? You discovered that there are certain patterns or certain processes that they're going through. It's difficult for the customer, so they're bringing the SA in, but that's not A, it's not the best use of their time, and B, there's no reason why this can't be automated. And if we just send documents, it's not going to be very useful. So you created let's call it automated demos, or you created instructions that people could follow in the
Yeah.
context of your automated demos, and then now it's a resource that can be used and reused over and over.
And they do. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's exactly right. I think scale is all about, you got to be good at pattern matching. You got to be good at not over listening and over leaning on the exceptions, because we all know this.
Oh,
The
that's good.
loudest voice is not necessarily the most high priority voice.
Mm,
So, pattern match for the masses, 80-20 rule. If it works for 80%, ignore the 20%. There's always going to be
mm,
the 100%. Nothing I've said is going to work for our largest, most complex customer, and that's okay because that customer probably has a dedicated SA.
Yeah.
um, and then be smart about the user. So whether that user is our SA and like how do we make it off the shelf for them? That was the DB demos approach. When it's the customer, okay, they need to look at Databricks documentation and AWS documentation, Databricks
Mm.
documentation and GCP documentation. Let's put those pieces together for them and package it up. I think there's so much power. Pre-sales folks know this better than anyone else. There's so much power in good user-centric packaging of information and messaging. It's really all there is to it.
So powerful. And I love what you said about over leaning on or leaning in too hard on exceptions. And you're right. I mean, and look, I mean, at the end of the day, we sort of live in a handling exceptions world,
Oh my
right?
goodness. Yeah.
But I think that is one of the key takeaways from this conversation is that if you're trying to implement something like this, you've got to focus on the 80-20. You've got to focus on the 80% and not get too caught up in the unique or the exceptions, as you said. It's such a good and this notion of thinking about the user and starting with the user, and there's a couple of nuances there, right? You've got the internal users that you're supporting, SAs, account executives, right? CSMs. And then there's the external user, right? Whether that's the admin on the customer side or what have you. So I absolutely love that. Ashita, let me just pause our or push our pause button here just for a moment. We had a few more comments. Alex McFerrin actually posted Quentin's. I think that's a link to Quentin's
Yes.
a post of his. Alex, nice to see you. Art chimed in. Self-service feeds buyer desire. Very well said, Art. By the way, folks, again, if you do care to say hello or if you care to ask Ashita a question or myself, of course, please feel free to do so. So, Ashita, we've talked about how this demo program that you've stood up, it solved a major POC problem. As a result, it shrank the typical deal length and life cycle. It helped you scale the pre-sales teams. We've also talked about this notion of client onboarding and how that has and that's critical to your business because
Yes.
it's a consumption model. If it takes them 4 months to get everything configured and set up,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's delaying revenue, right?
I mean, the whole reason, and I think our co-founder has talked about this in a couple interviews when he was on his APJ trip recently. The whole reason we brought pre-sales and customer success together was this. We wanted to reduce the time from the technical win that the pre-sales team got to the time that the
Mm,
customer was fully up and running, consuming
mm.
the 10K or 100K or $1 million of usage that we said they would, from I think it was 7 months for a new customer. And our goal is 4 months. And I don't have the numbers yet, but we know it's shrinking.
Yeah,
We know it's shrinking more in some territories than others. I mean, there's only so much you can do in a regulated vertical sometimes.
yeah,
But yeah, that was our goal because that for us is, for the Shark Tank fans out here, that for us is the CAC. That's our customer acquisition, right? Till the point that we get them using, we are not done. There is no
yeah.
deal that says we're now done and now it's not a customer acquisition cost anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and what's incredibly interesting to me, and you're really helping me reframe the way I think about a demo program. Frankly, I think my mindset was the demo program primarily helps in achieving the technical win. And what you're helping me understand is no. It's not just about helping you achieve the technical win. It's really about accelerating the entire life cycle of that customer and removing friction
Yes.
at various stages, right?
And look for the patterns that are high volume and low value, right?
Mm,
If somebody in your organization is having the same conversation 100 times with 100 customers,
mm,
that's the one where if you reduce it from even a 1 hour walkthrough to a 15-minute check-in, that's huge. And by the
Huge.
way, it makes the customer feel better that it doesn't take, we talk about TCO, especially in this market where people are so sensitive to software cost, and people are going for the consumption model because of that. Like a lot of executives have been burnt by shelfware and renewal pushes. Um, it feels good to the user to know that it doesn't take a lot of person power to implement or get through their challenges on the software.
Yeah. Well, they appreciate the fact that we're making it easier for them, right? I mean, we're removing friction from the process, not only for us, but for them, right? Absolutely love that. So Karina Babcock has asked a question. Karina, nice to see you out there. When/why did you decide to buy a demo platform versus building your own? So I'll even preface that with, did you consider building your own? And then if so, why did you ultimately go with buying a demo platform?
Yeah. So about so February is when DB demos kind of went big. We decided we were going to make it the standard. We decided that it was going to be on databricks.com/demo. I think around April, May of that year, a couple of essays who honestly I didn't know them. They kind of just like found me and they're like, "Hey, we know what you do. We have an idea." I'm like, "Okay, sure, it's my
Fire
job to
away.
have ideas." Um, and they said, "We think what we need is something that's a click-through demo," because
Mm,
they were in the startup SMB part of our business.
yep.
And so you're talking about like one essay for 10 AEs.
Yeah. Yeah. High volume, shorter life cycle or shorter cycles, high transaction. Yeah.
No better place for me to find innovations for scale that I can scale to the rest of field engineering. So I'm always listening to that team when they come to me
Yeah.
because, what is it? Something is the mother of invention is the mother of necessity. Is that what it is? Something like that.
Necessity is the mother of
That
invention,
makes
I
more sense.
think.
That makes
Yes.
more sense. Yes, that. Um, and they came to me and they said, we think we need some kind of a virtual essay demo that we can give to
Mm,
the AEs, but then also we can leave behind. Ironically, when they came to me, they were talking about both enablement and POCs already.
okay.
At that
Interesting.
time, I was like, I don't know how much I can influence enablement. Customer success is still a separate org. That changed very quickly about 6 months after that. But I can help you with the pre-sales part, and this is really useful for a lot of parts of our business.
Right.
And so at that point, we evaluated a couple platforms. We knew what we were looking for.
Mm,
We knew it needed to integrate with our CRM. We knew that the biggest issue was when you put together a video of a demo, just maintaining that video means you have
mm,
to re-record it, redo the talk track. It's a very expensive process. Essays don't have that much time.
yeah.
You have to make it really quick for them to take, oh, I went and showed insert number one bank in America this demo, and now five other financial services essays want it. How
Mm,
can I quickly anonymize this and give them a vanilla version of this?
yeah.
If you have them record a video, they have to re-record that video every month, every
Really
time
difficult.
there's a new
Yeah.
release. That's at the rate of our innovation and our product surface area. It's not tenable. We didn't even try doing that. I
Yeah.
know a lot of companies do that and then they move to a tool like Reprise. So we didn't even try doing that. We knew it wouldn't work for us. So we knew what would and wouldn't work for us. I was lucky. I had worked at a much larger version of a demo engineering team at
Mm,
Salesforce.
yeah.
Um, I had the pleasure of learning from their mistakes because they did a lot of
Mm,
experiments and they had the cash to do a lot of experiments. So I knew what I did and did not want. So we went through that process and we ended up with Reprise. Now, Databricks in general, remember, still not everybody was convinced that something like this would work. Startup
mm,
would work. So what we did was we piloted it at our internal annual boot camp. We have 1 week a year where basically our CRO tells all of the sales people to just go away, leave field engineering alone, and that is a week that we are focused on. It's like a technical boot camp,
yeah.
basically. 1 week
Yeah.
intense technical boot camp for all of our field engineering. And we used Reprise, or we gave the option of using Reprise to all of the presenters because there's a ton of
Wow.
hand workshops and things we do.
Yeah.
I didn't even need to do anything after that. Like the feedback on the comments were, I need this for a customer. Can I get this link? Is this customer facing yet? What is this tool? Blah, blah. I'm like, okay, that's my business case. I'm just going to
I
copy
love it.
those and send them
I
up the
love
link.
it. I love it. So I want to repeat what you're saying here because I think this is a powerful message, and it links to Claudia. Hello, Claudia. She asked a question about any incentives for SEs to create more content, and so we'll get to that question in just a moment. But what I'm hearing you say is that you have once a year, 1 week a year, you bring all the field engineering team together. Sales knows to leave you alone, and you sort of have it's skunk works and it's technical deep dives, and you basically put Reprise in their hands and said, it's here if you want it, see what you can do with it. And that one thing alone sort of sparked this fire to bring it to customers, use it in engagements, etc.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
brilliant.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And what do you think really lit them up, if I can use that term? What was it that they saw that they instantly knew or could tell was going to be so valuable for them?
I think at the time, the last efficiency survey that we had done with them, they were saying a lot of, I spend so much time on the phone with my customer, literally walking them through how
Mm,
to do XYZ,
mm,
literally walking them through how to set up AWS, walking them through things where support has gone, this is not out of the box. You are going to have to figure this out with them.
yeah,
Um, and this is not a surprise to many pre-sales folks, especially if you work in the enterprise space. I mean, their implementations are so complex that
yeah,
to have the exact permutation and combination, you almost have to be an SA. So they were coming at it from, this would be huge for our customers. This would be huge for
mm,
me because I wouldn't have to do this. They were coming from, this is a win for me. Can I have this? And can I build one for this particular use case where I'm spending too much time on the
yeah,
phone with customers, either in pre-sales or in the post-sales world. So yeah, that was it for them. And then what we had to obviously do is kind of herd the cats and say, well, it's not going to be a free for all.
yeah,
We got to have some QA here. We got to have a governance. And so today, anybody who wants a license to create content can have it. But Quentin and then two other folks, one in our enablement org and then one in our marketing org, really hold the publish button as
gotcha.
administrator. Whoa. Okay, administrative right.
Wow, you
That's a
you
big deal.
you just hit the publish button. That was impressive and well
Yeah,
timed.
yeah.
So to that, so then, and Art just asked a question too, which Art we'll get to in just a moment. Claudia asked, do you have any incentives for SEs to create more content? So has getting the SAs to create content, has that been a problem at all for you, for you?
Yes and no. It hasn't been for the team that wanted to. The first 6 months we had no problem. We had a governance issue, not a content issue. Like we had too much content, and I was worried that our team
Mm,
would become the bottleneck. Now, once
okay.
things stabilized a little bit, we realized that we needed to be proactive about, for example, right now we're going very hard at industry first end-to-end data intelligence platform demos. That's been
Okay.
the mandate that our CRO gave my team literally 2 weeks ago. It's like, this is what
Yeah.
I want. I want it by end of July. Like, okay. um, and so now we are talking to our FE leaders and saying, can we incentivize them? We have this thing called internal currency called Databucks, and you can go and buy like really cool, like chucks with Databricks logo and North Face
Yeah.
jackets with Databricks logo and stuff like
Yeah.
that in our internal swag store. So, we're trying to figure out, do we do Databucks? It's also tied into a lot of our promos.
Mm,
So by the time you hit senior SA or any equivalent in our organization, you are required to show what we call team impact through assets.
mm,
And apart from like a blog or something like that, what what essays very often gravitate to is coming to us and saying, here's something that I'm really good at. Here's 3 deals I've closed in this space. What can I do to help you guys make a demo? And when we release a demo,
Mm.
or when we do NPI, so our global NPI process, this is something we've signed off with product operations, is we always have a blog by the product manager. We always have like an internal cheat sheet, which we call our unvarnished truth, which is like, here's what it's really happening. And then Quentin always works with the product manager to have them co-create a reprise that we post on LinkedIn.
Mm.
And these were some of our highest performing because like the product manager posts it on LinkedIn, everybody retweets or reposts it. And then rather than seeing a video of it, like you can actually walk through what it looks like in the product. So now it's part of our NPI bill of materials is like
It's
a reprise.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, people just know what it means, like even in product.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I just some of the terms you're using, I just absolutely love this idea of team impact through assets. It's just such a great, just a great term, and I love the idea that you have the, what did you call it, the
Data
demo
bugs.
note. Well, the data bucks, yeah, I love that too. But you said this is part of it is the quote, the unvarnished truth.
The unvarnished truth. Yeah.
Absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Our culture is big on the unvarnished truth.
I,
We
I
can't
love.
help customers if we don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and look, I've worked with organizations where the product team was reluctant to even share internally, quote, the unvarnished truth, and that's very difficult. So I think it's incredibly powerful. Okay, question from Art. Thank you for the question, Art. What was the biggest shift for pre-sales to take on the idea of, quote, keeping the end in mind, client success, and how did that go? So I'm taking, and Art, thank you for the question. The way I'm taking this is, how has pre-sales sort of evolved to this idea of, it's not just getting the technical win or getting the customer onboarded, but it's more of a true consumption model. I think that's the question.
Um, I have an answer that is unfortunately not probably the answer Art's looking for. It didn't truly happen till our CEO made the very unorthodox decision that people were going to be, including AEs, including pre-sales, people were going to be incentivized on consumption and have consumption quotas and not commit quotas. Now they still get accelerators, and it still gets, they still retire um, commission but not quota if they do a deal. But the beating heart of our forecast calls and our sales motion now is consumption. And we made this switch, I
Mm,
want to say 1st Feb this year. So we're still living it. We
yeah,
made it for a couple of businesses last year, but we made
yeah.
it fully this year. It's very unorthodox. I'm seeing more and more companies. I think AWS and Azure both have some version of this. GCP
Hmm.
definitely does. I really think it's where SaaS will have to go
I
if we
agree
don't want
100%.
software to become a problem.
Yeah,
Like the
I agree.
market, your Wall Street outlook is dependent on one big customer doing a renewal,
Mm,
it's not
definitely agree.
viable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I'm not surprised to hear that it took an incentive plan, a change in the incentive plan to get people on board. I mean, you incentivize the behavior that you want, right? I mean, none of us, I mean, I don't know, maybe there are a few volunteer workers at Databricks, but my assumption is most people working there are paid for what they do, right? And so, the truth is we are all motivated by money to some degree, right?
I
So
mean, and so are
no,
our
it's great.
customers. The whole reason
What's
we did, and so are our customers. The whole reason we did consumption is it de-risks us for the customer right away.
Yeah, yeah, love that. Ashita, I don't think it's easy to believe, but we have been at this for 45 minutes already, and we are going to wrap up here at the top of the hour. There's one thing that we haven't talked on, talked about, which I would love to touch on just briefly, and that's this idea of product-led growth. A lot of people are investing in platforms like Reprise to fuel product-led growth. Is that now something that you all are embracing on some level? And if so, can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we're embracing this year with that switch to consumption-based incentives and behavior. So the idea obviously is, if you think about the top of funnel for a consumption world, it's about getting users to as far as they can get without having to heavily touch them. Now,
Mm,
we actually repurposed a lot of our traditional inside and outbound sales, so our BDRs and SDRs, who usually sit alongside the AEs, into what we are calling GDRs, which is growth development representatives,
love
which is our
that.
way of saying that their job is not to find business that become a deal. Their job is to find customers or practitioners or users who can grow the consumption in the account.
Mm,
Now, think about what these people are against. On one hand, they're dealing with maybe CS graduates who are data scientists and who learned Databricks in college and want to use it in their first data scientist job in corporate. On the other hand, they're dealing with BI folks. It's incredibly hard to expect a GDR to navigate to where an AE would, these kind of personas, without
mm,
technical help.
yeah.
And it's incredibly expensive to give them a pre-sales resource that early. I mean,
Yeah.
anybody who's a pre-sales leader will tell you that unless it's a certain level of qualification, I'm not giving it. I'm certainly not giving it to you for one practitioner.
Yeah.
Um, so how do you solve for that? Sure, you need to
Mm.
up level the GDRs, but you can't turn a GDR into a pre-sales
Or
professional.
a data scientist overnight, right?
No.
Yeah.
So the answer has to be something like Reprise. Like we tried even giving them the demo environment, and that was they were really nervous. We were really
Mm.
nervous that they would break it. So Reprise is like risk-free for them and risk-free for us and easy for the user. In fact, we now have a big project going on with our product team where they're trying to put a lot of digital user journeys into the product itself. So, like a more traditional
Mm.
product led growth
Yeah.
strategy. And same thing, like they've got tooltips and all in the product where some of them are linking to Reprise. And the fact that we know who clicked on what,
Mm.
how far in they went. I think
Yeah.
somebody asked that question earlier. So yes, all of that information does come in, and I think you can even integrate it with Salesforce or something if you want to.
Yeah.
It is incredibly useful for the product team,
Mm.
for the observability team, for the documentation team, for and certainly for these GDRs.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that you just said triggered a thought for me. We've talked a lot about how you have used the demo program to automate key stages of really the entire customer's journey, and you've just shared how you're using it to fuel the product-led growth, and really it's product-led growth driving consumption and helping the GDRs. We haven't really talked about insights, and you mentioned briefly insights or data. Are you using the data that you can gather or insights that you can get from the utilization, from the use, et cetera? And if so, in what way is that? First of all, what information are you consuming that the platform is producing, and how are you using that information, or is the organization using that
Yeah,
information?
yeah. Um, so middle of funnel, which is where we started, right, is like the pre-sales and the onboarding. It's very much on an account basis. So even if you're leaving behind a Reprise demo link, as it gets shipped around and shopped around within the company after your big RFP demo or whatever it is, we know who's looking at it
Gotcha.
and how far. And if we see a lot of people looking at it, we're like, hey, this is good. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the account basis.
Yeah.
Now, if I zoom all the way out to the company basis, I mentioned 2 weeks ago we had a meeting with our CRO, and one of the things my team showed is what is the leaderboard of what Reprise replays are getting looked at. From an
Mm.
industry perspective, unsurprisingly, it was our RAG LLM one, but closely followed by what we didn't expect. It was, the industries that we didn't expect. It was the use cases that we didn't expect.
Interesting.
Now, that's not an insight by itself. Like, you got to go and look at, is that because this one is really hard? Is that because there's a lot of demand for this? But it gives
Right.
you a start.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then for onboarding, it's really simple. Like, if they're not using it, or if they're still coming back after they've used it and still need more hands-on help, we need to fix it. That's fairly
Mm.
straightforward.
Yeah.
Um, what I want to do, and what this whole GDR thing is allowing me to do, like, I literally had a water cooler conversation yesterday with the head of that team, is we want to integrate it into Salesforce
Mm.
so that our insights are actually telling us what's the most popular in which kind of account. And then our platform will tell us, okay, here are some other accounts and users who look like this. So, hey,
Mm.
GDR, we suggest you send X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So I don't think we fully unlocked it. I think there's a lot more to get
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
But as anybody in pre-sales knows, integration and interoperability are not as easy as they sound. But
It
a lot of
never
that,
is.
yeah, but a lot of
It
that
never is. Yeah.
is on
Yeah.
our side, right? Like, we've spent so much time just pushing out the right inventory that it's only this year that we're getting around to looking at what's coming back
Yeah.
and fine tuning based on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and what I'm hearing is that you've had so much success addressing some of these repeatable processes, right? The things that, and I even wrote it down, the things that are high volume and low value, right? That now and now you've got some information and some insights that you can start to mine through.
Yes.
And what I hear you saying is that now that the product led growth aspect is starting to pick up, you can now use those insights to further
Yes.
drive where those GDRs are
Right.
focusing and targeting,
Yeah,
right?
because we have built on our own platform lookalike capability to say, this person did this, and here are five other people who look like this. GDR, go after these people with the same approach.
Yeah,
Um, so now we can just plug in this data, which is the
yeah,
next thing we need to do.
yeah,
If anyone from Reprise is listening, this is what we need to do next. We need to just plug in that data and have it automatically tell our GDRs. I mean, we
yeah,
only hired our GDRs a quarter ago, so
yeah,
as
yeah.
we get in a year.
So it's all new. Ashita, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this conversation and how much I appreciate you being here today. It's really been interesting for me to hear these insights. Like I said, this has really been educational for me. I'm in closing. Are there any sort of words of advice that you would have, sort of, taking a half a step back, thinking about the journey you've been on now for a couple of years? If there's anyone out there, maybe in a similar role or a leader who's thinking about trying to do something like this, any sort of big lessons learned or key pieces of advice you would give sort of as we wrap things up here?
Yeah, I think there's really two, and these are more about how you approach things than what you do.
Mm,
I already talked about, if it wasn't obvious, I talked about customer journey every which way, your employee journey, your customer journey, your prospect
mm,
journey.
it's good.
Keep that in mind. It's very easy to jump to a tool and think that it solves the problem.
Mm,
I think most often it's the governance of the tool that is more important, and what you put in the tool than the tool itself. Let's be honest about
mm,
it. It doesn't matter
mm.
which space you're talking about. It doesn't matter which space you're selling into.
Yeah,
um, right? We all know this from being pre-sales engineers. So, one, keep the customer journey in mind. I'm a big design thinking person. You will find me casually listening to anything that the Stanford Design Lab puts out. So
mm,
I bring that. I love the fact that I get to bring that into my day to day.
yeah,
And then I think my second one would be, understand the culture of your company. Understand where the innovations are happening. Do not be in an ivory tower. You are more likely to take an incubated problem and successfully scale whatever they've done to fix it
Mm,
versus like try and guess what's going to fix something for, at this point for us, it's like 2,000 field engineers.
right.
I doubt very much that anything I've done has not had its seed in something that somebody already told me had worked with just like their 5 customers or just their segment or just
Right.
their region. So innovation is collaborative. The worst
Mm,
thing you can do as a leader or as a strategist or a scale person or an indirect pre-sales engineer or demo
mm,
engineer is sit in a little ivory tower. You're only as good as how connected you are to the reality of the field.
mm. Those are such powerful words. You're only as good as how connected you are to the field. Well, and I love what you're saying, that you didn't go around trying to quote recreate the wheel or create the wheel. You went around looking for what's working, and then how can we automate and institutionalize
Yes.
that, right, and scale it, right. And it was built based on the partnerships and the relationships that you made within the organization,
Yeah.
right. I mean, I just think that's such a great lesson learned. But by the way, I don't know if Art is still with us, but Art gave you a shout out and said, "Great session. You are ahead of the curve," in Art's words, and I couldn't agree more. Ashita, this has really been a great conversation. Thank you so much for being here. Is it safe to say that you would be more than happy to have people reach out to you if they have any questions or would like to
Yeah.
connect?
Yeah. I'm going to be the first to tell you I'm not that responsive on LinkedIn. So wait till the weekend. But yes, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, fabulous. Folks, for those of you who hung around the entire time, thank you so much for being here. You can always follow these. If you follow the hashtag Tech Sales Advice, you can get these alerts. And of course, I welcome you to go to Tech Sales. It's actually techsalesmastery.com now that I've partnered with Kerry Sokolsky. Ashita, thank you so much for being here. If you don't mind, hang around backstage just for a moment. I'll share a few parting thoughts. In the meantime, folks, thank you for being here. We will be back next week with another episode of Tech Sales Advice. Hope to see you then. Thanks all.
Thank you.